This is Bloomberg Businessweek, insight from the reporters and editors that bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
It is Bloomberg Businessweek. Some news in the world of retail today, Carol. Macy's issuing a downbeat outlook for sales in the current quarter. It was a sign that executives might have been too optimistic about their expectations for the holiday shopping season. Abercrombie & Fitch announced better than expected sales for the holidays, but its share price tumbled. This after its sales growth target fell short of some analysts' expectations. They closed out the day lower by more than 15%, close to 16%. I do know that Travis Hess watches this stuff closely. He's CEO of Bigcommerce. It's an e-commerce platform that works with businesses around the world to help them sell you their stuff. Companies such as Yeti Cycles, Johnny Walker, Uplift Desk are among Bigcommerce's customers. It's publicly traded on the NASDAQ. It's a small cap, market value just shy of $500 million. Travis joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Travis, good to see you. Doing some research on this, and you probably hate this comparison, but it's the world we know. I'm looking at the website. I'm understanding your business. Are you a competitor to Shopify?
Of course. Yeah, I certainly have come out of that ecosystem as well. I think our approach philosophically is different.
How so?
Composability is at the core of what we're doing. And if you want to draw an analogy, it's more open versus closed. I think our perspective on this is we believe more disruption and innovation will come by way of third-party ISVs and software providers. And as a result, our focus is really about the ingestion of those capabilities now and in the future, as opposed to building them innately into the platform themselves.
Would you say they are the biggest competitor out there?
It depends on the market. Certainly for traditional D2C and certainly digitally native vertical brands, unquestionably. I think if you look at other...
D2C meaning direct to consumer.
Direct to consumer, correct.
Go ahead, please, finish your point.
Yeah, I think if you look at different markets, different geographies, you're certainly going to have different types of competitors, but certainly they're the most outward and vocal about it, and certainly the one most obvious to understand.
So tell us, a company comes to you, a retail, and tell us what you do for them.
Yeah, I think for retailers, brand manufacturers or distributors, we are optimizing revenue for them while driving profitability independent of channel. I think the name of the game now is to go where customers want to interface with you as a brand, regardless of where they may buy your product or service. And I think the key challenge is organizational agility at the organizational level to be able to go experiment, drive value exchange through those different channels with speed, agility at scale.
So this means potentially building out an e-commerce platform, but also then helping them with back office, maybe at actual retail operations, and making it all work together.
100%. So whether it's an owned channel or a non-owned channel, that could be sitting brick and mortar with an owned brick and mortar retail. It could be non-owned marketplace. It could be a social channel or those that may to come in the future.
I want to talk about cart abandonment because this is an issue for retailers.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, you put
all the time.
Well, what causes you to do it?
Because I'm just not quite sure I really want something, or I'm thinking about, do I really need this?
Sure.
And it's so easy when you're just going through like, yep, and then I'm just like, I'm done.
So
and then I get those annoying emails like, you left something in your cart. I'm like, nope, I meant to.
You got to return the cart, Carol.
I know.
What causes me for cart abandonment is maybe more lazy than Carol.
Sure.
It's the payment part. And one thing that I love seeing when I'm checking out is Apple Pay there.
Of course.
All I have to do is put my face in my phone and press the button twice. It's bought. I don't have to pull out my credit card, enter the info, put in my address.
Wait till your two little ones can do that.
No, they're never allowed to do that.
Makes you so nervous.
No, that's not going to be good. What's the checkout process? How do you make sure it's standardized so it's so easy to part with your money?
Well, to exactly your point, I mean, we take an agnostic approach to checkout. So as far as ingestion of payment providers, whether that's Apple Pay or PayPal or Stripe or whomever, obviously whatever fits the best use cases for a particular brand and size and business logic. But yes, it's to remove friction. It's to make that decision very quick, very easy, very seamless. So less steps along the process.
Do you have your own equivalent of Shop Pay? Like if I'm buying something, I don't even know if it's a Shopify powered site. I put in my phone number, they send me a text message, boom, my information's already there. I don't need a password or anything. I got my stuff.
We do that today. PayPal just launched Fastlane, which is an alternative to that with a much deeper install base. So certainly if you're anonymous coming to a site and you begin to check out and you're not logged in, the fact that they have your account information will pre-populate that and again remove friction to make it more accelerated.
But you don't have a native one for your company.
Historically,
like
we've not gone to
does.
market with native. We've certainly talked about it. We've considered it. That may be something we explore in the future. But the business model for us has not been, we are not a bank. We have not monetized and commercialized a business model based on a payment capacity. We've believed in very much, ingesting that agnostically.
It's so funny that you say that, Tim, that I agree that, it's just sometimes when it's Apple Pay, it's just so easy.
So easy.
But sometimes with Shop Pay and the information comes up and I'm like, oh yeah, somebody else has all my information. And sometimes that freaks me out. How do you continue to think about security of shoppers' information?
I think security is front and center, obviously, and I think the more personalized we get, it's kind of threading the needle.
Yeah.
You want to serve up a very relevant, personalized experience, but not so much where it feels intrusive, where people are hesitant to obviously share information, because the more information they share, the more relevant, immersive experience we can kind of deliver to them at scale. And so it is a fine balance for brands, obviously wanting to capture consumer information and leverage it in a way that would be, viable and meaningful and driving efficacy, but not so much so it feels intrusive.
You are a shopping platform, so you see, right? You see a lot of information, a lot of data goes through, you have access? I am curious about someone like you guys, that what it tells us about what's going on with consumers and the retail environment.
Yeah, we certainly can see consumer behavior as far as what's being added to cart.
I wasn't trying to get you to tell me what Tim last bought, but anyway, go ahead.
It's all good. Yes, of course, and there's many companies that have access to these sorts of things, and they want us to. Of course, we're going to see behavior of what's being added to cart, where people are browsing, how often they're browsing, and what they're clicking on, what they're abandoning, and how that's facilitating abandoned cart emails and things like that. And of course, we're leveraging those capabilities and serving it back to organizations. And they're also using their own algorithms and analytics and insights internally to get better at what it is that they're doing.
But what does it tell you about the consumers that you do have that access? Just big broad strokes here.
I think consumers most recently have become more promotionally oriented. I think a lot of people are abandoning carts because they're testing the waters on, could I get a better deal if I wait a little bit longer?
I look for coupons all the time.
Yep.
Wherever I am, but go ahead.
And you've seen this trend through the holiday traffic. I think brands that have historically weren't promotional have gotten very promotional. I think you've seen a promotionally oriented economy in many capacities, certainly in traditional segments like fashion and health and beauty and things like that. I think most folks want some semblance of a recurring revenue model. So anything that's subscriptively oriented becomes a bit easier to predict and a bit stickier. And those that aren't, again, especially with fast fashion and other industries where they're constantly turning over, it's all about velocity of SKU volume. It does tend to be promotional, but it's also eroding margins. And again, it's a fine line, especially with potentially looming tariffs. What impact is that going to have on profitability if those tariffs negatively impact a supply chain and cost of goods?
Do you see the tariffs being implemented? Does that happen?
Is that
something that
I think that's been. I think it's been signaled. I think love or hate the incoming administration. I think arguably you can judge past behavior that tariffs are a real thing. It's been certainly socialized, and depending on someone's supply chain and how oriented they are in producing things in areas that may be impacted by tariffs, it's certainly going to impact their business.
Your customers getting ready for it?
Yeah, I think everyone's getting ready for it, and I think you're seeing people hedge. Certainly in industries that would be heavily impacted by manufacturing in China, maybe looking at alternatives in region, or maybe bringing things more domestic. Depends on the industry, depends on the margin, but certainly it's front and center.
Cool stuff.
Travis Hess, really cool stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. Congrats on the new job, too.
Thank you guys for
You're
having me.
3 months in. CEO of Bigcommerce joining us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Well, the 43rd annual JPM Healthcare Conference in San Francisco is underway. It brings together healthcare executives and pharmaceutical industry leaders and tech innovators to discuss the latest in the sector. One of those companies is Oxford Nanopore Technologies. It's the $1.6 billion market cap company that has devices that sequence DNA and RNA to offer real-time analysis. We got with us right now Dr. Gordon Sanghera, the co-founder and CEO of Oxford Nanopore Technologies, joins us from the JP Morgan Health Conference. Shares surging today as much as 25%. It's the steepest gain going back to September of 2021. So you guys had some news out, a trading update that analysts certainly found reassuring. We're going to get to that in a minute, but let's take a big step back here because I'm interested in, for the layperson, understanding exactly what your device does, what your technology does.
Sure. Afternoon, everybody, from sunny San Francisco. Warmer than London. So we have a genetic analyzer that is analogous to what happened in the computer industry. So today, the incumbents that do genomic analysis are like mainframe computer providers. They're large, complex machines, multi-million-dollar infrastructures. We are able to provide cheap, small devices, very similar to the change in computing from mainframe to desktop to handheld. Here's a sequencer I brought with me. This is our MinION.
So it's like the size of a smartphone for people who are listening.
It really is, yes. And that was critically important in distributed sequencing and understanding all the variants during the COVID epidemic.
How much is one of these devices?
A couple of $1,000, so very cheap, very affordable. That's orders of magnitude cheaper than an existing centralized machine, where you're batching everything to get economies of scale. These things are pay as you go. So it's really the step change in the way that we saw democratization and access of compute. It's the same for DNA, RNA information. And as we know from the last pandemic, distributed access to DNA, RNA information is going to be important to stamp that out quickly.
Dr. Sanghera, from our understanding, the presentation you did or are doing or planning to do at the JPM Healthcare Conference, there's 4 core end markets for you guys. The biggest one is research. So by enabling researchers and R&D at, I guess, companies, at academic universities and so on, and institutions, I guess, tell us what that will be used for and what that enables these institutions and companies to do that they might not be able to do today so easily or so cheaply.
Absolutely. So if we do it in the context of human genomes, that's 3 billion letters on one continuous chain, 4 bases, GTAC. And for 20 years, people have taken that DNA, broken it down into 200 base pair chains, made a copy, so gone from full high definition color to black and white. And then you get some interesting insights in biology, but you're really losing a lot. We're able to read the native DNA as it's presented from, for example, a patient sample, which means we can look at that DNA in full high definition, in color, in a very simple device, in real time, with affordable, accessible equipment. So those researchers, whether it's a PhD student in academia or, big biopharmas, they're able to illuminate what is often referred to as parts of the dark genome, which code for some of the most difficult disorders that we cannot get at today: mental health, neurodegeneration, early onset cancer, Alzheimer's, things like this. And they're now beginning, and they're at the foothills of that journey, to understanding the biology that underpins these diseases that we've not really moved the needle on for 50 years.
So is this to help not only in treatment of individuals, but also to create better modalities for treatment?
Absolutely. Both accelerating biomarker discovery by moving to, so we all talk about the genome. So 20 years ago, the genome was published, and that's really just looking at single point mutations. There is now a movement to multi-omic genomes. What does that mean? Well, we have 4 bases, GTAC. There is actually a 5th base, which is chemical corruption of your C base, and that chemical change is methylation. And methylation is the smoking gun in all cancers. And that's been known for 20 years, but this technology really allows you to get comprehensive maps of methylation, which are then having a huge impact immediately. So for example, acute myeloid leukemia needs treatment immediately. Diagnosis today takes 3 to 4 days, maybe a week. By looking at methylation in those patient samples, so there's chemical corruption, they can determine the type of leukemia, AML, in 4 to 6 hours. And that is game-changing in terms of treatment. So rapid insights in acute and critical care is something that this technology allows. because it's distributed, point of care, it's real time, and it's giving you content that you do not get with existing tech.
Help us understand who has the devices versus who doesn't have these devices, i.e., what is the market opportunity that you have left at this point? Because if it is indeed something that offers a service at such a lower cost, then is everybody who wanted one, do they have one yet?
Not yet. It's a great question, and it's about the evolution of a disruptive new technology. We are in the foothills of that journey. So who has them today? These are the sort of forward-thinking academics, clinicians, biopharma companies, particularly, the newer wave of synthetic biology, gene editing, cell and gene therapy companies. All of these people are creating momentum around the use cases, and the sort of 2 to 3 year outlook, you will see that then moving towards routine clinical practice. And that's why, in what is an incredibly tough market with all our peer groups either posting no growth or negative growth, we have continued to hit our year-on-year growth, 23%, and half two to half two, 34%, because there is that unmet need is being met, and at breakneck speed on a weekly basis, we see game-changing opportunities. The next phase of turning that into routine clinical workflows is something that will be big for us in 25, and then 26, 27, you will start to see that market penetration to much broader routine use.
So Dr. Sanghera, so I don't know, fast forward then, is it 5 years from now, 7 years from now, how might this product that you guys have developed, how might it change our world? And I also think about, from our audience, the Bloomberg audience, from, a financial perspective and investing perspective, what opportunities that potentially could open up as well, or your device could open up as well.
Absolutely. So in the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years, early detection of cancer has become a thing. Liquid biopsy, so where you're looking at short fragments of cancer cells before there's a tumor. And if you can pick that cancer up early, there's a real opportunity that your treatment outcomes can be much, incredibly improved. So I envisage a world 3, 4, 5 years out where if you've had cancer, you're in remission. Instead of going for a 6-monthly checkup, you'll do a monthly blood test. And if you see that cancer reoccur, you pick it up immediately and it gets treated. But ultimately, if you come from a high-risk grouping, because your whole genome's been sequenced, and we know that, you'll then be routinely surveyed, and distributed healthcare will become a big thing. But let me take that a step further. I'm Punjabi heritage, so I have a high propensity to cardiovascular disease. And and probably should be on statins. But it turns out that if you were to eat tomato that are rich in something called beta-lycopene, you can get the same benefit of a drug, statin.
Wow.
And so I envisage a world where through gene editing, I have a custom diet that would allow me to not have to take a drug, but a nutraceutical, in this case, a tomato that's been crossbred to have high lycopene, which would have the same benefit of a statin, but it's natural. So I think there's just going to be, I'm just kind of picturing 2 bookends of where and how ubiquitous the ability to be able to do things with genetics and do it at a personalized level will really impact us.
Hey, before we let you go, we only have about 45 seconds left, but we have a viewer listener getting in touch and curious about what you think about GLP-1s, given that over the last couple of years, this is probably the medical technology that we've talked about the most.
It's an interesting one. I'm looking forward to seeing large cohorts of patients on GLP-1 being sequenced, so we can really get that multi-omic view and look at the cause and effect and better understand the mode of action, which will be beneficial for everybody.
So you see learning. We need to learn a lot more about them.
I think so. I mean, it's a great start. but there are already people talking about side effects and, not being as impactful as it needs to be. And understanding the biology, the source code of an individual who's taken these medicines is where the future lies. That individualized, personalized approach will be game changing. Well, and I think we make GLPs more efficient.
Interesting. Fascinating conversation. I hope we can get you back real soon. Dr. Gordon Sanghera, he is co-founder and chief executive officer of Oxford Nanopore Technologies, as we said, in the London trade, soaring about 25%.